Welcome to a modality and alternative assessment and a free textbook walk into a classroom concurrent session. Today, we are lucky to have Sybil Freebie from NDSU here to offer her insight on student retention. Sybil Freebie has been using open educational resources and open educational pedagogy since 2016. An NDSU mini grant allowed her and two other colleagues to create their first textbook for a first-year college writing course titled Writing Unleashed. Since then, she's compiled or composed many other OER textbooks for a variety of courses. In addition to classroom experience with these elements, she has also presented at numerous conferences regarding these ideas and their potential to lower stress and anxiety on students as well as teachers. So, thank you so much.
Well, thank you all for, I had this to notice would come. I was thinking that would present to an empty room and I'm like, oh, I'll just do it anyway. But thank you for coming. And I think I probably should give a tiny bit of a backstory. I am an alumna of NDSU twice. Left, taught K-12, came back. So I have a little love affair with the bison, it's all good. And now I'm in Wapaton. Quick demographic of the students I have. We have trade students down there, so I will have plumbers sitting next to athletes, sitting next to liberal arts transfer students, and average of about 100 students per semester because our classes are capped right around the 20 mark, and I usually teach about 5. Yeah, I don't know what else you need to know about me. I am in my hometown. I grew up in Wapaton, and so it's weird to be at the campus that I learned to ride my bike on a long time ago. All right, so let's jump into this stuff. And what I'm hoping to do, I timed this last night, and I think I might have either talked too slow or too fast. So I do want to get to the point where we can discuss. And I know I only have 30 minutes. So I'm going to try to plan this where we can discuss and look at my student comments, because I feel like the student comments really show off why these 3 ideas are so important to help with retention and other issues that we have. Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say about this. If you want access to all of my slides, my slide deck here, this is a little bit.ly I came up with. If you email me later, I can share it then too. But it basically does bit.ly NDSUs in all caps _ and then these words are capitalized. 3 ideas walk into classroom. Whatever. So here's what I'll cover. I'm sure most of you have heard about high flex modalities, alternative assessment, specifically ungrading and OER, but I'll cover those briefly and also argue, or at least explain the arguments for why people use those, why educators use those ideas. I'll show the practice of them, and then my student comments that I've collected, and obviously the brainstorming part is really important to me too. So, do that, yeah. Definitions and arguments. I know that the NDUS has probably their own, not probably, I think they have their own definitions of what hybrid and high flex are to them. In my case, or on our campus, hybrid, I see my students Mondays and Wednesdays, and Friday is like the asynchronous online portion. So that's how hybrid looks like on our campus or in my classes. I've heard of 50-50 hybrids before, where half of it is done online and the other half is face-to-face in person, that sort of thing. So hybrid kind of has its own meaning there. The high flex part, for me, I just looked at it as high flexibility. So students can come to class or everything's pretty much already posted online. So even with the hybrid schedule as it is, Monday, Wednesday, if they are sick or what have you, they have something come up, they can still learn the things they need to learn by going online to my online course show. So they're not totally just in the dark, even if they can't come to class. So I kind of covered this already, but also I feel like the reason that these hybrid high flex courses work so well in retaining my students, I've had very few withdraw, I've had very few fail. And that's simply, I think, because of the flexibility of it. And so retaining them through the whole semester, very few kind of get off track. I think this last spring, man, I had 1 or 2 withdrawals and 3 Fs out of 100 students. So, and I don't think it's because I'm like super easy or something. It's just that they are now allowed so much more opportunity to get their work in and to learn the objectives that I have set, or that the course has set forth for them That's the most important part. Before I started doing this, I did lose students because I was much more harsh and that they had to be there. The learning was in the classroom. And I tell them now on day one, I know you're not gonna learn just here in front of me. You're going to learn like in your car listening to me, and maybe if I did a recording that day. You're gonna learn at home watching a TED Talk about something. So this is the alternative assessment piece. I'm grading for me. I kind of got smacked upside the head with it in 2019, which was perfect timing before COVID hit. But for me, it is a total focus now on their learning and not necessarily points. I think students do come to us brainwashed to thinking that I just wanted this for the points. I don't really, and you'll see the student comments, they even noticed a change in themselves when they don't have to worry about, oh, I'm gonna miss a point on this, or I'm gonna miss a point on that. It becomes not about being all about the points and trying to get the best grade or what have you. And I know some of them are still geared that way, but now it's about the learning. And so I constantly go back to how does this help student learning in my class? I do it with, I know I bug a lot of faculty when I'm in class in meetings, and I say, but what about the student learning? And they get mad at me, but I'm like, but that's what we're here for. They have to learn the things to go out and like use those objectives. The responsibility now is mostly on them as learners. So if they do miss class, like I said, with the high flex and the hybrid stuff, it's on them to seek it out and to learn the material. I obviously am going to guide them. I always thought that I was the guide on the side. And after having kind of the epiphany about ungrading, I realized I really was still acting as sage on the stage, which is not a bad thing. It's just not how, for me, my personality, I'm so much less stressed out now that I'm truly a guide. I'm just guiding them through it all, helping them learn what they need to learn. And their stress is lower, my stress is lower. It's wonderful. That's probably a pain point that I would bring up to faculty at any point. And now I'm not really assessing them like I used to. Now I'm giving a lot of feedback. I call myself a feedbacker, so I'm giving them a lot of feedback. They use whatever they want from that feedback to make their things better. They get a lot of feedback from their classmates. And when the keynote brought up the power and privilege that we have in the classroom, I tell them on day one, and we do have diversity in Wahpeton, it's mostly white, but we do get some students in there that are not white and come from non-privileged backgrounds, socioeconomic statuses that are different. I tell them on day one, I'm a white woman who has read a lot of dead white guys in my life. My idea of good writing is like, oh, that's, by the way, I teach English. Sorry. Anyway, but my idea of good writing is bias. I mean, I've only read like this, this chunk of people or whatever, dead white guys, my whole life almost. Most recently, I finally told myself, not by anything else but a white guy, unless he happens to be gay, then sure. But that's a whole other diversity, right? So I tell my students, I want them to open up my mind, and I try to open up theirs to, what is good academic writing? And we have this conversation. And it's really interesting. So I've done this the last 3 semesters, and I'll say, what is good writing? And their definition is it has no errors. I'm like, that's it? No punctuation errors, no grammar? That's all you've been told? And at one point I said, why do some of you think you're not a good writer? And none of them will ever come out and say that a teacher told them you write like crap. But implicitly, they were given back a paper. Many of them will tell me this. So they're given back a paper and it has red ink or purple ink, but it's all over their paper. And that gives them the thought, okay, I suck at this. So coming to becoming a writing teacher who just gives tons of feedback to them has been, again, less stressful on them, less stressful on me, because now I'm reading their work as a reader, and I'm not trying to proofread and circle all the comma problems or whatever. It's like, who cares where the commas go? I now tell them, like, Ernest Hemingway, he put commas wherever. Like, Emily Dickinson capitalized whatever she wanted. I don't really know why. So we don't need to worry about that stuff. Plus, we have tools like Grammarly and nerdy friends and tutors who will find those goofy mistakes for us. Let's make sure the content makes sense. The organization is there. The argument is logical or whatever they're writing. So that's where I'm coming from with the ungrading part. This is a lot of words. And I know this is like one thing you're not supposed to do with PowerPoint, but I wanted to show you what it says in my syllabus. And I truly just tell them, they're going to assess themselves. They're going to learn through reflection, feedback. We're not going to worry about grades. I go through all of this. I have had one student bring it to my attention that the LMS, Blackboard, not my favorite person in the whole world, but, or thing, entity, but how Blackboard is situated around points. And so this person, the student said, you can't be gradeless because of this system. And I said, you're right. But they haven't really created an LMS for those of us who want to focus on feedback. There isn't. So I do have a grading schema. I've changed my grading schema on Blackboard. So it doesn't show them points anymore. It shows them like complete versus read feedback versus empty, like don't have their stuff, whatever. So I have tried to shift even the grade book to words and not points. It's very difficult. I don't think there's a system out there quite yet that revolves around learning and not points. I also think that it tells them that things are late and it's always in red text. That's not good, but anyway. Here are all the different ways, like our keynote was mentioning. Look, it's a buffet of things you can attempt. I have done portfolios in the past. I love doing process letters where they take me through the process of how they put together a project. That allows them the metacognition skills to reflect on what they're doing. They're almost assessing themselves as they do those process letters. Like, I didn't do a good job of citing my source, but you know, those types of things. And I just, this part down here, it can lead to a more positive learning experience and a greater engagement. Again, contributing to retention. OER, I did bring 2 of my books just to show the quality of what Amazon can pop out for me. And I just love OER. I think it's because it links the fact that I love to write. I never thought I'd be like a textbook compiler, but OER basically open educational resources that either are things that are in the public domain that we can take and use for free, or there's so much out there now that is licensed under the Creative Commons licenses that you can use with certain permissions and things. And I like putting them together. I get to use my creativity. My students benefit because they are less likely to drop the course because they can't afford the textbook. I offer them digitally free, and through Amazon, I do a no royalties print. So like this one was 10 bucks maybe. The other, I don't think any of mine are over 15. And so the students are strictly paid for paper from Amazon. Here are some other benefits beyond just the financial piece. When you put together a textbook and OER materials, you can use so much more information that comes from the global majority, which is basically just non-white people that have written things. And that's text and images. There are so many more websites coming out with open images that showcase people with different disabilities or different skin colors and all sorts of things. I was talking to a student once about how her nursing textbook shows bruises on white skin and not on dark. And she said, I really wish there was, and I thought, oh, that's the OER thing right there. You could do a whole nursing textbook that shows all the different tones on different, anyway. You can remix OER to include more LGBTQIA stories and authors. You could also just change the pronouns in your OER to they, use more they just to kind of be more encompassing, or bring up non-binary people as like, I think there was a math OER that I heard about where they didn't do like Tom and Jim, they diversified the names so they weren't so white, but they also added in like a non-binary person who was struggling with math because everybody struggles with math, or at least in hiding things. And then the accessibility part is really nice. Now that I have digital copies of my textbooks, it's much easier to make audio. I did assign a textbook way back that did not have audio, and the publishers just didn't have it either. And so now I have audio chapters. Open pedagogy, I won't focus on that too much, but basically open pedagogy allows students to kind of get involved with the creation of scholarship. But for me, the textbook, I get consent from them. I think that's in the next, this is some other ways to do OEP. But basically, to go back here a second, the way that my students get involved with my textbooks is I ask for consent if I can use their work. And so they will potentially end up in a future textbook. Some of them think that's cool, some of them just think this woman's cuckoo, so. Okay, so here's the practice of it. Where am I at? Ooh, all right. So here's how my high flex hybrid stuff works, and kind of already touched on a little bit of this, but they choose when they want to come in person or online. They decide that on a weekly basis. Yeah, I kind of covered this. And so here's probably the pain point for teachers. There is a lot of upfront work to create a class that can run this way. But to be very honest with you, when COVID hit that summer, I said, you know what? I am not scrambling again for sickness, for a pandemic, for whatever. So that summer, I said every single class I make from now on is going to almost be able to be run like an online class. We're just going to have everything there. The students, if they get sick, they have funerals, they have all sorts of stuff in their lives. They can still access the learning. And so that was kind of just a decision I made for myself. I know that not everybody has the time, the money, the effort to do that, but it just has eased their stress. It has helped me in so many ways. And so I think I already talked about parts of this. Yeah. What is nice is, okay, so yes, you missed class, but there's the online module. Go ahead and read or watch what I missed or what I covered. And in the pink shaded parts here, this is what it looks like even in more depth. So if you sometimes have students in class, and sometimes you know that students are going to do this later, what kinds of tools can you use? Well, like the keynote was bringing up the syllabus this morning, and I have my students collaboratively annotate the syllabus right away. And so I have an editable Google Doc that has the syllabus. They go on there and make comments and talk to one another about all the different things in the schedule, the policies I have, whatever. You can use other tools like Hypothesis is another one that allows for collaborative annotation. So does Cami. Canva is an amazing website. I didn't realize until halfway into teaching children's literature this spring that you can make it editable for people to just give them the link and they come. So in 110, we did a collective, like a classroom slide deck of the writing process, but then in Children's Lit, they put together a timeline together of like, okay, when did, oh, now I'm blanking out on my Children's Lit, but like looking at the history, I have a history chapter in here, but let's make a timeline of when the first, supposed children's, piece of literature came out all the way to now. And so we did that collaboratively. Padlet is another website that's perfect for doing that too. I've used it for brainstorming. And then in Children's Lit again, I used it to collect children's books, so you can share a link and talk about what the children's book is all about, that sort of thing. Here's the practice of ungrading. What are some ways that we test or that we check for learning? We use tests and papers. I think traditional assessments such as multiple choice exams, they don't always, students can guess on them. That's probably why I hate the ACT. Like, I think I was hungover when I took mine, so I don't think it's an accurate reflection of who I am. Can't believe I just said that it's being recorded. But so it's just a snapshot, and papers may showcase thinking on paper. But like I said, if the teacher is assessing from a biased viewpoint, that grade is subjective as well. So here's how this is in practice in my classroom. Right now, if I have any kind of test, and I did use them in Children's Lit, but I gave them multiple attempts. This idea is nothing new. And I realized its potential when I took the Creative Commons certification course in the summer of 2019. Not only is that course amazing for the content that it gives you, but it was a well-designed online course. And I was so happy to be subjected to it. I took so many ideas from how they had the framework of that course. And the quizzes were multiple attempts. And I thought, oh, well, this just makes it easy. But then I thought, wait, if I got a question wrong and I could go back, I learned the material because I went, oh, right. And I thought, why am I not doing this in my class? The students are learning by going back and reminding themselves, no, oh yeah, it's this one, like this is, and then I chalk that up to the fact that I remember so much from that course now because I was allowed to go back and like constantly, I think I did a couple of them a couple times, but if you can do that, that kind of gives them more chances to go back and learn. They assess themselves. They sometimes we create a rubric in class, or they will create a rubric as a group. There are declaration quizzes where they declare that they did the work or not. Process letters I already mentioned. I have them reflect 3 times throughout the semester, and more feedback from me and classmates. I know this is tiny to all of you, and if you have the link, you can look at this probably easier. But here's my first declaration quiz where it says, true or false, I watched this video about Blackboard Ultra created by Sybil. This means I took notes and on the video and I'm responsible for its content. So I have them kind of check that they did these things. I am changing it next fall to say, I'm asking like question 2 is now going to be an essay question where I'll say, okay, please summarize what you got out of that video. So that way it takes just one step further for them to reflect on what they got out of it. Because yes, it is easy to go in here and I guess cheat and say, yes, I did these things, I did, and they might not have. I have had 2 cheaters try to cheat my ungraded system since trying it, like, so that's probably 2 out of 400 students. I'll take those odds. And like here, this is the syllabus and the collaborative annotation. I added 3 comments and questions to the syllabus document, true or false. So just kind of declaring their work. And here's what it looks like. I don't know how many of you are using Ultra. I'm piloting it on our campus, and it's. I'm not. You know what? I'm not going to complain about Blackboard today. I'm just going to go with. Not going to complain about it. Just let it go. Let it go. Here's a screenshot though of how one little module looks in my children's lit. So the history, I have the objectives at the top. I have a video collection. Here's where they're collaboratively annotated together, the chapter 2 that I think was about, the history. Here's a recap quiz, can take it multiple times. And here's that timeline I was talking about with Canva. So here are the different ways they can learn about this chapter. And again, they can do all of this with me in class, with me guiding them along, or they can do it at home. Or a combination of whatever. Okay, the owl kind of goes over some things. Yay. Here are just some of my textbooks. I love them so much, but I don't know if that needs to be the point of today too much. They're fun. And students do not, I mean, they have access on day 1 now. They can't say, oh, I don't have financially, they can buy your textbook. No, you have the digital version, it's on your phone, Godspeed. So what do I do with these? Basically, I print off a few copies to put in the classroom, so I have my own classroom copies. As an author, I get them for slightly a little cheaper, not much. So I do put them in the classroom, but then also I do an early email or I send out a link to everything the week before classes begin, so they can go to Amazon if they have Prime, they get the free shipping, and they get it in a couple of days. And they decide right away if they want print or they're okay with having it digitally free on their phones or devices. I have different versions. I have the print. I have a PDF screen reader for those who need to put it through a screen reader. I have a basic PDF print if they want to go to a different, like there's Lulu Publishing, which they could print on Lulu. Lulu is slightly more expensive than Amazon. I have a Microsoft Word version and a Google Doc. And of course the audio. Here is some, I went to this webinar maybe a year ago where they tried, but not tried. They put, it was one of the first studies of trying to take what the impacts of OER were into actual money and data. And so it does save students quite a bit. It does tend to get students a better grade, just because I think the learning is more accessible to them. And the retention, like is that called a persistence rate, when they take the next batch of classes, they are more likely to continue on. That's according to this study. There's a link there if you want to look at that. Okay, I think I talked about the consent form. I do have a project too where they can revise a chapter in the textbook. And so here's, okay, I like the student comments are my favorite. So the high flex modality, I had a student actually tell me, so that would have been the fall of 2020. We were masked up, but face to face. I recorded myself in every classroom just in case students got sick, couldn't come, whatever. And I had a student the next spring, she had taken my 110. She told me in 120, she said, yeah, you kind of became a podcast. I just turned you on and would listen to you as I was cleaning my house. And I was like, I podcasted myself? Oh my God. So that's what's kind of nice. I record myself once in a while when I think that the lecture is going to be something that people should probably hear come out of my face or whatever. And that was really kind of interesting. And I'm thinking maybe I should be podcasting stuff. I don't know. Here are the comments about grading, alternative assessment. Students do realize how arbitrary grades can be. And so that I wanted to pinpoint in here. The stress level I've already spoken to, and that is I see that, and every time I have them reflect on the process I'm doing with the assessment, they always say my stress level is lower. And this part here, what if my paper or work isn't good enough? that just hurts because how many students in my past have been teaching since 1999? I mean, how many students did I crush with my red marks and my, anyway. I like the idea of ditching grades. Most of the stuff I enjoy and I'm good at, I taught myself. I asked them that too, like, how do you know when you've learned something, because you can, like, when somebody taught me how to do a stick shift, yeah, you know when you know how to do that. So you know you're learning. And I like this, there's a lot more enjoyment in things when there isn't any pressure. And writing, if I can build up in them at the 110 level, if I can build up that whole, like, this should be stressful, hopefully that carries them through. And anytime they come across another writing thing, like they're writing a grant, or they're gonna write a work report or a incident report at work, they don't feel that stress. They know that they can do it. A couple more things to pick up here. I feel like sometimes I'm only doing my work for a grade and not to learn. Yikes. I like grades, but they make me nervous. Ditto. I'm with you. This was from my creative writing, and yeah, I really like that. College should be more about learning and not about punishment. Writing should be punishment. Period. I was able to get feedback and make appropriate adjustments. In creative writing, it seems like this really lends itself, because what is creative writing? If a student's writing for me and they think that their introductory paragraph is interesting, that's very subjective. Like, what's interesting? What's interesting to me is not going to be interesting to a plumber. I mean, I'm guessing, for sure. A couple more. This is a really long one. In the green here, unfortunately, the simple A through F grading scale doesn't do me much justice. And I think this might have been a creative writer as well. And the sentence before that, I put a lot of effort into my writing. So figuring out what I do wrong exactly would be really helpful. And that can show up in feedback. You don't have to give the student an F. The F tells them nothing, the feedback will. And then here are some comments about the OER textbook choices. So they liked having the choice. They thought the textbook we used was a lot more interesting. By the way, I have way more comments than this. I just scaled it way down. I try to keep, like, I have slide decks upon slide decks of all these comments. So I just wanted to show you a snapshot. Yeah, easy to understand, more interesting. Students are already paying the college to teach them. I feel these are hidden expenses and are a forced charge. Somebody else commented that they have access to the computers instead of having books all over our rooms. I think that's something. Someone brought up the socioeconomic status of that. And this student brought up how maybe they don't need to write parts of the book. Some of the stuff I did write, some stuff I just found from other sources. This one was a 120 student, and it not only boosts my ego, but kind of like warms my heart. But this resource made me feel like my instructor Sybil was right there with me, because they know that I wrote parts of it, and I wanted to keep costs down for them and all that. But this resource made me feel like my instructor was right there. That's reassuring. All right. Okay, 4 minutes. That's not a lot of time. So we can brainstorm, we can even ask questions. I have some resources on here. I've started to collect all sorts of things that relate to ungrading and to OER. And most recently, Brian Beatty, I think it's the same, he put out an OER textbook about hybrid flexible course design. I'm in the middle of it. It's kind of a tank, but it's so interesting. He scoured all the different ways people are doing these hybrid courses, and he has collected data and practices, and it's out there. I have a link here too, but thank you all so much. I thought I was gonna be by myself, so thank you so much.